Resuming debate, the honourable member from Huron-Bruce has 20 minutes.
Oh yeah, standing ovation. Mr. Speaker, when members of Parliament go back to their ridings on the weekend or their constituency weeks, and they go to community events, or they go to the local arena, or they go to the local community center, Legion, wherever they go, I'm sure they get the same comments that I get. Doesn't matter what the political party is, likely. And sometimes you're a little amazed at what people want to talk about. If you're at an arena, seldom they want to talk about hockey. What do they want to talk about? Corruption. They ask me, who's going to jail? I was in an arena on Saturday, and an elderly couple said to me, who's going to jail for all this? What's going on? And what really, I think, is at the core of what really upsets the Canadian public, and certainly in my area, is, and I think back to years ago when I worked for a foundry, and how hard the workers worked, and grinding castings, pressing castings, working hours in the hot summer days inside the furnace room, slagging furnaces, very hot. Workers working 8-hour shifts, and then they're working 4 hours overtime afterwards. And I can remember years ago, this is going back a long time, sitting at the lunch table at the cafeteria, and they were looking at their paychecks, and they're talking about their overtime and how much they kept on their overtime. And these individuals, they're going into work sometimes at 3 a.m. to work a 4-hour overtime shift, 3 a.m. to 7 a.m., and then work the regular shift, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., same on an afternoon shift. And they're looking at their paycheck, and they got about 52% left over of what they should have been making on their overtime. And they're grinding, they're working every day. And then they read on the news, the newspaper, the internet, TV at night when they're watching the news with their family, they see this waste. Day after day, year after year, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that after 9 years accumulate well into the billions. And people at home that are working hard, they look at this and they say, what's going on? What's going on? This is not what we want. This is not the Canada that we were hoping to have. And this is where the frustration boils over. And I think back to the 2015 election, and it was in a few debates that I participated in, and I said to the people, I said, look, folks, the same people that ran the government, that are running the government in Ontario, Gerald Butts, Katie Telford, we all know the names, they picked the pockets of the Ontario taxpayers for years. Scandal-ridden abuses. And I said, they're coming to make a visit to Ottawa to pick the pockets of the Canadian taxpayer now. That's right out of the debate. I'm not taking credit for my foresight, but that is the facts. And so I thought, why is this culture of this party, the Liberal Party, like this? I know not all the members are like that, but why is there a culture of behind the scenes and at the senior leadership? Some of the big hitters. Cancelled gas plants. That was $1 billion debacle. People went to jail for that, and ended up being a contributing factor to why we're so tight on electricity in the province of Ontario. School closures. Lots of people have forgotten all the school closures in Ontario during the Wynne McGuinty years, but there were 600 schools closed. 600 schools closed. And in my area, I remember going to the reviews. Very, very, very upset people. And as it all turns out, if they did not close the schools, those schools would be almost full today, just with the way the population has grown in our area. So I would consider that a big waste. Kids that used to be able to walk to school Now they're taking a bus. Nothing wrong with a bus, but if you could walk to school or ride your bike to school, I think that's a lot better off. Doubling the debt. I mean, there were some pretty good times in the world's economy in those years, and they ran a deficit, I think, the entire time. Higher taxes and fees. Hiking the aviation fuel tax, beer and wine taxes, sin taxes. Sounds familiar, but this is what they did first in Ontario, and they brought it to Ottawa. New taxes on small businesses, did the same thing.
See that the honourable member is rising on the point. Honourable member from Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill is rising on the point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just wondering what the relevance of this is to the amendment being under debate right now.
The honourable member is the honourable member from Huron-Bruce is falling within the guidelines that the Speaker would find acceptable for this debate. The honourable member from Huron-Bruce.
Very much, and our offices are beside each other, so we can talk about this later if there's any ongoing questions. Hiking the cost of a driver's license, fishing license, hunting license, camping license, liquor license, event permit, court application, the list goes on and on. So not being able to manage their own internal interactions and affairs, cost overruns, and including red tape. This all happened in Ontario, and now it's in Ottawa after 9 years, fully embedded. $8 billion on e-health. And I mean, if you ask anybody in Ontario where you would go to see what your e-health record is or where it's located, I don't think there's many citizens in the province of Ontario that would know where their e-health record is located. $2 billion on smart meters. A lot of people would remember that in our areas. $304 million over budget on the Pan Am Games. $400 million on Presto card cost overruns. On and on and on. And on some more. We'll go on to another topic for the speech here. I go back years ago when an employee where I worked in finance, and she maybe had her hand in the cookie jar. That is pretty much what happened. And after internal investigations, the company discovered that she had misappropriated over $400,000. And that's 15 years ago, so it's probably about $3 million in today's dollars with inflation. But what happened? The company did the investigation. The staff at the company did the investigation, I'm sure in assistance with auditors, and they turned the documents over to the OPP. The OPP then used those documents to do the investigation. The individual was charged with fraud over $5,000 and was sentenced to an 18-month conditional sentence. And in fact, restitution was made and all the money was recovered. So if you look at that small little example, you'd ask yourself, what's the difference here? There really is no difference. The government, not me, but the government across the way, they have the ability to produce these documents, unredacted, and then they have the ability to turn them over to the RCMP and let them make the determination. But it is awfully difficult to do a page at a time and have to wait for delays receiving the documents. It'd be much easier, much more appropriate to turn all the documents over and have the RCMP make their evaluation. I know the previous member from King Vaughan, she made points for her in her speech about some of the scandals that have plagued this government for 9+ years now. And members of Parliament that ran in the 2015 election can remember that time. And I'm sure my Liberal colleagues across the way can remember that time, and I'm sure they are very excited for the promises that were made, the hope that was offered in that 2015 election, and a pretty significant majority government was formed. And I'm sure those members of Parliament could have never believed in their wildest dreams that this is where we'd be today. Pages and pages and pages of scandals and issues and problems and money that will never be found, never repaid, all laid at the hands of the Prime Minister, his Chief of Staff, and basically the cabinet ministers that are here and the ones that have left, likely collecting seven-figure salaries now. SNC-Lavalin, though, I think would have to be one of the most egregious cases in the history of Canada for abuse of power. And what's most remarkable is that there's a significant number of the key players in that scandal that are still employed. They're still elected. It's hard to believe that it wasn't a house cleaning. It wasn't a house cleaning. And I thought, what would Jody Wilson-Raybould have to say if she was re-elected as an independent member of Parliament in the last election? What would she want to say in this speech here? It would likely be the most impactful speech about what it is like to be a minister with the thumb on you the whole time, to play fast and loose with the law, to achieve the goals of the Prime Minister and the corporations. Another one that was shocking, and it was really during the COVID times when it was uncovered, was the We Charity scandal. And people couldn't believe it. People couldn't believe it. And I know Bill Morneau, he took the hit for that one to protect the Prime Minister for another day. The Trudeau Foundation. I don't think we'll ever know all the truth about what's going on, what has gone on at the Trudeau Foundation. Hopefully someday we will. Foreign interference, again, people at home, people who, they're in disbelief. They're in disbelief. And I hear the member of Timmins, he's chirping away like he always does. Mr. Speaker, I don't know if you've ever driven down a country road and you see a dog running along the farm, barking at every car that goes by. That's really what he's like now at the end of his political career. He's really just like that country dog.
The honourable member is an experienced member of the House and knows that it is important not to compare other honourable colleagues to animals and the like. And so I'd ask the honourable member just to withdraw that and continue along with his. I see the honourable member from Timmins James Bay is rising on a point of order.
Well, certainly the issue of foreign interference is very serious, and yet when we ask questions, we're called dogs in this House. The fact that they were calling people cockroaches before. Mr. Speaker, you need to establish a standard of behavior that the Conservatives can't just denigrate politicians who are serious about issues of foreign interference by calling them.
So I've asked the honourable member not to compare members and to withdraw those comments, and I'm going to give the honourable member a chance to do that. But I think it's worth making a point. I did notice the line about cockroaches, and in discussion with others, we made it very clear that that wasn't in reference to other honourable members. It was reference to if you see one mistruth, you would see many mistruths, and so that was the comparison. It wasn't to people or to members of the House. Certainly, this is not the way that the chair had interpreted, and I don't think a reasonable interpretation would be that way as well. But the honourable member from Huron-Bruce, I'm just asking him to withdraw the comment and continue with this discourse.
Yeah, you're right, Mr. Speaker, and I wasn't comparing him to a beautiful, Labrador or anything like that. What I was trying to...
I'm just going to ask the honourable member, please, to just, while I entertain a point of order, I'm just going to ask him, please, to just withdraw the comment simply. The honourable member from Winnipeg Centre is rising on a point of order.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So they're talking about taxpayer dollars. This has cost their filibuster $15 million. And in the midst of it, we also have to put up with the most degrading name-calling in this House. Day in, day out, denigrating other elected officials with their unacceptable behavior. This is worse than a frat house with a bunch of frat boys in it. So if they're going to cost taxpayers $1 million a day, at least they could be a little bit more respectable to all the people across Canada they're slapping in the face, stopping legislation getting through.
Thank you. Honourable member from Winnipeg Centre. I'm going to return to the original point and just ask the honourable member from Huron-Bruce to simply withdraw the comment.
Yeah, no, and I did withdraw that comment, Mr. Speaker, about 3 points orders ago. But the point is, with the member from Timmins,
the honourable member from Timmins, James Bay.
I'm only asking for fairness, Speaker. When you ask him to withdraw, but he decides that he's going to use it as a platform to continue personal and denigrating attacks, he either withdraws and apologizes or he sits down. If it's going to be, if we're going to go into what's a dog and a good dog and a bad dog and why someone like a dog, well, we can do that all day, Speaker. But you need to establish fair rules for this.
So, I thank the honourable member from Timmins, James Bay. I'd like to refer him once again to the long-standing tradition of this place. Withdrawal is what's asked. It's withdrawal and apology. They're equal. I usually only ask for an apology when the member doesn't, when the chair feels that the member isn't following through on the original request. I've asked the honourable member to withdraw. He has said that he is withdrawing. I would, just to make it perfectly, the honourable member, let me just finish this point, if I could, before I recognize the honourable member from Winnipeg Centre. I've asked the honourable member to withdraw. The withdrawal wasn't clear. There were some other points of orders which were brought up. I've asked the honourable member to withdraw. He has said he is withdrawing the comment. So that is where we are at. The honourable member from Winnipeg Centre.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. I don't think a withdrawal with qualification is a withdrawal. In fact, he went into another tirade of denigrating an individual. That's not a withdrawal. That's not a withdrawal. I would ask through you, Mr. Speaker, for the member to withdraw his comment without qualification.
So I thank the honourable member from Winnipeg Centre. I will offer the honourable member from Huron-Bruce to withdraw the comment without qualification, and then we can continue.
Speaker, if she had been listening, my fourth withdrawal, I withdrew those comments. And so there's no point, because the record will show I unqualified withdrew, qualified withdrew.
Perfect. I thank the honourable member. I'm going to. Honourable member from Winnipeg Centre, the chair has now heard an unqualified withdrawal. The honourable, this is not a challenge of the chair. Can we please allow the member to speak? Excuse me. The honourable member from Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the member has now accused me to not listening, and I was listening very carefully to him denigrating members of the House. Again, that is a withdrawal with qualification. I would like him to just withdraw the comment without qualification. Again, this is another example of qualification, a behavior that is totally unacceptable. Now he's saying that I'm not listening. That is unacceptable. Unfortunately, I've had to listen to him, these Conservatives denigrate members of this House for 3 weeks at $15 million. I'd like him to withdraw without qualification.
So I thank the honourable member for her thoughtful comments. The chair considers the matter withdrawn and closed. I'm going to invite the honourable member from Huron-Bruce to continue with the speech. He has 7 minutes and 37 seconds left.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate that. The last point I wanted to make, and then I have a couple other points in the speech I'll make, is some of the hypocrisy that we see with the Liberal government. And I mean, it just goes on, but how many times have I listened in this House of Commons about we got to do something, the Liberals saying something about fossil fuels, oil, gas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I read an article this morning in the Globe and Mail, and it was an update on the results of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which of course in itself was a way overspending debacle, $30 billion. But the point was, who's the king of oil in this House of Commons? Who's the king of oil? The Environment Minister. Canada is now producing 5 million barrels a day, and it's increasing every year under the Liberals. Why is that? Well, basically they need the money to pay for everything else. So they're quite pleased to let the oil come out of the ground, which I agree, it should come out of the ground, and it should be shipped by pipeline. But I find it ironic that they go on and on and on at length about fossil fuel, oil, etc., and the Environment Minister is now the king of oil, for now. For now. The broader issue at play here is the question of the government's integrity. The allegations of conflicts of interest within SDTC are particularly troubling because they suggest that the public funds may have been misused to benefit individuals with close ties to the government. This kind of behavior undermines public trust in government institutions and erodes confidence in the government's ability to manage public resources in a fair and transparent way. The audit findings that board members were voting on projects that directly benefited companies with which they had personal affiliations is a clear violation of conflict of interest laws. These laws are in place to ensure that public officials do not use their position for personal gain and that government decisions are made in the best interest of the public, not private individuals. When these laws are violated, it casts doubts on the integrity, the entire decision-making process. And I'm sure many people have read or have heard of some of the carrying on that went through with the minutes of these meetings, and it's pretty startling, really. It is important to note for Canadians that this kind of self-enriching goes directly against the government and council appointment process, which states that a person appointed by the government and trusted to oversee taxpayer money will not personally profit from their work on a committee as a government and council appointment, and neither of any of their family members. However, this is exactly what happened. In a 5-year period where there were 405 transactions approved by the board, the Auditor General sampled 226, so only half of them. She found 186 of those 226 transactions had some sort of a conflict. It's too much. It's egregious. If the Auditor General looked at all 400 transactions, statistically, that'd probably mean the rest of them are conflicted as well. It's a lot of money, Madam Speaker, and Canadians have a right to know, parliamentarians have a right to make sure that justice is carried out. On behalf of all those hardworking people I mentioned at the beginning of my speech, they pay their taxes each and every paycheck, they pay their CPP, they pay their OAS, and they trust that the people who they mark down on their ballot will do the right thing when they're in Ottawa, and that the dollars will be respected. And there are far too many people in our country that work so hard and pay so much in tax and create so much economic activity, only to be disappointed time and time and time again over the 9 years the Liberals have been in office. And to be honest with you, the last few years the NDP have been in on it too, because they've been propping up the government. And so when you look at it, there needs to be something done And for some of the members of Parliament on the other side, I'm sure they feel the same way. I'm sure they feel the same way. Nobody comes here to Ottawa to see what happened on this scandal take place. People enriching themselves for millions and millions and millions of dollars. And a lot of the projects never likely went anywhere. Then you get people back in our ridings that have contracting firms, construction firms, landscaping firms, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, all the trades, healthcare professionals going to work each and every day. And they see this on the news. And when you look at the hope and you look at the excitement in the country, it's not there like it used to be. There people are still want to be hopeful, but when they see this time and time and time again, and the list is unbelievable now, after 9.5 years, they are truly, truly disappointed. One director was particularly aggressive at this. She was appointed in 2016 by the Prime Minister, Andrée-Lise Mathot. She runs a venture capital firm called Cycle Capital. Her companies, before and during the time on the board, apparently received $250 million in grants. $114 million went to green companies that she'd invested in. So I think it's safe to say, when you're looking at these programs, whether it's Cycle Capital or any of the, no company needs that much money from the federal government. It's a smaller company trying to do, really no company needs that much money, but from a government standpoint, the dollars are there to deliver government services, not enrich insiders that really create little value. Thank you.